Do you think what's more annoying to you, the extreme left or the extreme right?
The left viscerally makes me often want to punch them more. Because they're just so often like anti-common sense. So they just insist on championing things that are really about them, but they have to feel like they're social justice warriors. You know, they have to. It's very important for them to feel like they're the good people, and by telling us that we're all bad, that's how they know they're good.
Right.
Have you ever noticed how politics has gotten to the point where you can't even enjoy a joke without somebody turning it into a full-blown moral trial? Like, you say one thing out loud, and suddenly you're on the witness stand getting cross-examined by a guy with a source. Tweet loaded up like it's a weapon. And that's why this Bill Maher clip hit so hard, because he's basically saying what a ton of people are thinking but are too tired, too cautious, or too socially terrified to say. So, buckle up because we're going there. And real quick, if you're into these spicy no-filter breakdowns, do me a favor, smash the like button, subscribe, and drop a comment early so the algorithm knows you're part of the chaos with the rest of us. Maher gets asked a question that's honestly the perfect summary of the modern American brain. What's more annoying, the extreme left or the extreme right? And the way he answers is exactly why people either love him or want to launch him into the sun. He says the extreme right is more dangerous because of democracy stuff, election denial, climate denial, all that. But then he says something that makes the internet clutch its pearls. The far left makes him want to punch them more. Not because they're more dangerous, but because they're unbearable. And listen, before anyone starts hyperventilating, you know what he means. Do you know what he means? He's talking about that specific flavor of politics where it's not about solving anything anymore. It's about performing righteousness like it's a Broadway show. It's the politics of look how good I am instead of look what I fixed. It's when someone's entire personality becomes being offended and their entire hobby becomes telling you you're the problem. Maher calls it anti-common sense. And that's the key phrase because common sense is the one thing modern politics seems allergic to. Common sense is like garlic to vampires. The second you bring it up, people start hissing and backing away. And the far left in Maher's view has built this whole identity around being the good people. And the easiest way to feel like the good people is to convince themselves everyone else is bad. That's not politics. That's a self-esteem routine.
Right. People want to voice their opposition to what's going on in any administration. They're not happy with this, they're not happy with that. That's the way to show it. I mean, the Democrats are going to have to work really hard to figure out how they're going to blow this one.
And it's not like this is some niche theory either. You've felt it. You've seen it. You've been in a conversation where someone isn't even listening to what you're saying. They're just waiting for a word they can clip and use as proof you're a villain. Like you could say, I think we should help people. And someone would be like, wow, so you're implying people can't help themselves. That's ableist. It's exhausting. Now Maher slides from that cultural frustration into the bigger political question. What is the Democratic Party doing? And why does it keep stepping on rakes like it's a sport? He talks about wanting a strong Democratic candidate, someone who can bring things back to normal, whatever normal even means anymore. And he points to Gavin Newsom as the strongest option right now, at least on paper. But here's where it gets interesting because Maher isn't doing the usual partisan cheerleading. He's basically saying, yeah, Newsom might be the guy, but California is a mess. And if you live in California, you already know exactly what he's talking about. If you don't live in California, you've still heard the stories. Homeless encampments, street sanitation problems, weird laws, crime anxiety, and the vibe of wait, are the adults in charge? Maher throws out that example people love to fight about. If somebody breaks into your house and you defend yourself, you're the one worried about jail. Whether you think that's a fair representation or not, the reason it lands is because it speaks to a feeling. A feeling that in some places the system is more concerned with symbolism than safety, more concerned with appearing compassionate than being effective. And then he goes right for the jugular on the homelessness issue. He brings up this idea that compassion got twisted, that old school liberals used to think compassion meant getting homeless people off the streets into shelters, programs, treatment, and stability. But now compassion gets framed like, let them stay outside forever because moving them is oppressive. Like what?
So I would like to have a strong Democratic candidate to get things back to a little bit of normal.
Is Newsom the strongest?
He is right now. I mean, again, California, a lot of crazy stuff in this state. We know better than anybody, you know? If somebody breaks into your house and you shoot them, you have to worry that you're going to go to jail.
Right.
You know, lots of stuff like that. Homeless on the streets, I mean, and that's not just California. I've seen a number of people have died in New York, homeless on the street, because somehow they got it into their heads that the way to treat the homeless compassionately was not to get them off the streets. You know, us old school liberals, when we when we used to talk about this issue, the compassionate thing to do was to make sure they got off the streets, not to protect them in their pristine environment underneath a bridge.
And that's such a brutal point because it's one of those moments where the moral language sounds beautiful, but the real world result is a nightmare. Nobody wins. Not the homeless person, not the neighborhood, not the city, not the taxpayers, not the businesses. And the cruel irony is you can wrap it in a kind message while the outcome is straight up neglect. This is what Ma keeps circling. Vibes versus results, performance versus reality. And he's basically saying if Newsom wants to be taken seriously as a national candidate, especially for 2028, he can't just talk like a progressive superhero. He has to show receipts. He has to prove he can run a place without it looking like a cautionary tale. Because right now, the country looks at California like it's either the future or a warning label. And depending on the person, it's one or the other. Then Ma widens the lens. He's not just picking on Newsom, he's picking on the entire Democratic Party's branding problem. And his argument is simple. A lot of Americans don't relate to what the far left is selling. They hear the rhetoric. They see the priorities, far left, and it feels like a party speaking a private language to a small group of online activists. And let's be real, this is where Democrats get into trouble because they'll focus on a cultural fight that matters deeply to Twitter but barely touches the life of someone trying to pay rent, find childcare, not get carjacked, and maybe, just maybe, buy groceries without needing to refinance their house. It's not that cultural issues don't matter. It's that when your entire vibe becomes culture war, you lose people who are drowning in practical problems. The average person isn't waking up thinking, wow, I really hope the Department of Everything changes the terminology in a PDF. They're waking up thinking, my paycheck disappeared, and my back hurts. Mars's point is that the far-left agenda often looks more performative than practical. And that's deadly in elections because voters don't vote for who sounds the most morally pure. They vote for who they think can keep life from getting worse. And then the conversation pivots to immigration and that whole leverage debate, specifically about government shutdown fights and DHS funding. The question becomes, is that the right battle for Democrats right now? And Mars is basically like, not really, because if Republicans control the House, Senate and presidency, what exactly are you doing besides staging a protest that changes nothing? This is another cold truth people don't like hearing. When you don't have power, your leverage is winning elections. That's it. That's the move. Everything else is theater. 3.
Another huge issue here in California and across the country is immigration. Now we're going to have a partial government shutdown over DHS funding. The Department of Homeland Security essentially not funded, at least part of it now, going forward for the foreseeable future. Is that the right fight for Democrats? And where do you think that should go?
Well, I think ICE and the border people already have the money.
Right.
So no. So I would guess that's not a great way to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's not.
They say that's the only leverage that they have.
Yeah. I mean, again, the leverage they have is to win the next election.
And here's where Ma gets savage. He says Democrats are going to have to work really hard to figure out how they're going to blow this one, which is hilarious because it's funny and also because it's the kind of joke that hurts. He's talking about that classic pattern where Democrats should have an easy win. The political conditions line up, the other side looks messy, and somehow the Democrats still trip over their own messaging like they're trying to lose on purpose.
Right. People want to voice their opposition to what's going on in any administration. They're not happy with this, they're not happy with that. That's the way to show it. I mean, the Democrats are going to have to work really hard to figure out how they're going to blow this one.
Think about it. Historically, midterms usually punish the party in power. That's not even a Republicans say this or Democrats say this thing. It's just political gravity. Voters get cranky, the opposition gets energized, and the pendulum swings. So, if you're the Democrats watching a moment where the incumbents are vulnerable, you. But instead, Mars is saying, the party keeps getting stuck in internal purity tests and controversial cultural stances that hand free ammo to the other side. Not because the other side is so brilliant, but because Democrats make it easy. They'll take a topic that could have been simple. Jobs, safety, costs, and then wrap it in 5 layers of activist jargon until nobody knows what's being said anymore. And that's when you get voters saying, I don't even like Trump, but at least he's not speaking in HR memos. That's the depressing part.
And, you know, I think old school liberals would like to see a candidate in the Democratic Party who has the strength to disassociate himself from a lot of the stuff that made Donald Trump attractive to people who didn't necessarily like him so much, but just said, you know what? His brand of crazy, yeah, I'm going to go with that over their brand.
The right doesn't always win because they're beloved. Sometimes they win because the left makes itself intolerable. Then comes the most Bill Maher part of the whole thing. His relationship with Trump and the meltdown people had because Maher had dinner with him. And Maher's response is basically, if you stopped watching my show because I had dinner with Trump, you're an idiot. And before you react, think about the logic. Maher is saying the important question isn't, how dare you speak to him? The important question is, what did you say after you spoke to him? Did Ma come back and suddenly become MAGA? Did he stop roasting Trump? No, he's saying he never stopped criticizing him when he thought he deserved it. So, what exactly are people mad about? The fact that he sat at a table with the guy.
Bill Maher, let's talk for a moment about your relationship with President Trump, which has been interesting over the years. You well documented that you had this dinner with him at the White House,
very well
which you
documented.
talked about, which people have, talked about. What's the nature of your relationship with him now? What's that like?
Well, okay, well, first of all, the people who stop watching my show because I had dinner with them are idiots, in my view. They just are. They're just
Right.
completely emotional because they're always asking the wrong question, which is like, oh, how dare you have dinner with Donald Trump? The question should always have been, what did I say after I had dinner with Donald
Right.
Trump? Now, if after I had dinner with Donald Trump, I came back to this show and was seduced by that dinner and stopped tearing him a new one every week, every time I thought he did something wrong, then you would have a case.
This is one of the biggest sicknesses in modern politics. The idea that talking to someone is the same as endorsing them, that the act of conversation is betrayal, that if you share oxygen with a political opponent, you're morally contaminated. That's not a democracy. That's a cult mindset. Maher's pushing back on the echo chamber addiction. The way some people want politics to be this sealed bubble where you only hear approved opinions and anything else is treated like a virus. And that's how you get people becoming dumber, not smarter. Because if you never challenge your beliefs get weaker. They don't get stronger. They become fragile little glass ornaments that shatter the second someone asks a tough question. He even says something that's low-key true and makes people furious. Trump is different in person, and he's like everyone who's met him says the same thing. Now, does that mean Trump is good? No, it means Trump is charming in a room, which is exactly why so many people underestimate how he wins people over. Politics isn't a spreadsheet. It's a vibe. It's personality. It's perception. And Trump understands that better than most politicians. Ma talks about how Trump operates through personal relationships. That's how he does business. That's how he does politics. That's how he thinks. He's not some policy nerd reading briefing books at night like a boring civic textbook character. He's a relationship guy. He's transactional. He's instinct-driven, and you can hate that. But pretending it isn't real is how you lose to it.
I also don't pause for making fun of the left when they are, in my view, crazy. But that doesn't.
And there's been plenty of examples.
And there's plenty of examples of that. But I never stopped with Donald Trump. So I feel like we, having met him and sat down for 3 hours, it was a long dinner, and the left got very mad at me for reporting it accurately, which is he's very different in person. By the way, everyone who's ever met him says the same thing.
I would say the same thing. I've met him several
Of
times.
course.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they just couldn't abide by this. But okay, that's the truth. He met Ma'am Donnie, remember, the mayor
Right.
of New York. He had been yelling and screaming at him, and then he had him to the Oval Office. I think he's a nice guy.
Right.
Don't you get it? He operates everything out of a personal relationship. You have to have a personal relationship. Trust me, he's not upstairs at night reading the briefing books.
Then Maher hits one of his best lines. Trump does a lot of stupid things, but he also makes people stupid. And man, that is a bar because what he means is Trump turns politics into a psychological event. People stop thinking clearly. They get possessed by emotions, either obsession, rage, devotion, or fear. And when people are in that emotional state, they make terrible choices. Maher's uncomfortable question is, what's the alternative? Trump is the president. You can't not talk to him. If you think he's dangerous, wouldn't you want more people engaging him, challenging him, pressuring him, and negotiating? Or is the strategy really to ignore him and hope he disappears?
Purely emotional. It's just so disappointing that some of the people who I think of as rational people, Donald Trump, He does a lot of stupid things. He also makes people stupid. like again, what is the alternative? He's the president. You can't not talk to him. What is the downside? I'm going to elevate him? Oh my God, you mean he could become president? It's just
get a little more attention.
It's silly. And when you do talk to him, he does listen. That's what happened. He does listen. I'm not saying it's going to change him, but what I was trying to say afterwards when I talked about it at the end of last season is he needs more people like me talking to him.
That's the weird fantasy some people cling to. Like if you refuse to speak to someone, they'll evaporate. But politics doesn't work like that. Silence doesn't defeat power. Votes do. Strategy does. Coalition building does. And this loops back to the original question. The extreme right is dangerous. The extreme left is annoying. Mars is basically saying the right has the heavier consequences, but the left has the more infuriating personality because the far left loves moral scolding. They love telling you you're bad so they can feel good. They love turning every conversation into a guilt ritual. And that might play well in a small bubble, but it repels normal people. Nobody wants to be around someone whose main hobby is policing language and intention. People want solutions. They want stability. They want leaders who can talk like humans.
Do you think what's more annoying to you, the extreme left or the extreme right?
The extreme right is more dangerous. Absolutely. They don't believe in democracy. They don't believe that in conceding elections. He's made that plain. The climate thing we just talked about, those are just two issues. There are others. The left viscerally makes me often want to punch them more. Because they're just so often like anti-common sense. So they just insist on championing things that are really about them, but they have to feel like they're social justice warriors. You know, they have to. It's very important for them to feel like they're the good people, and by telling us that we're all bad, that's how they know they're good.
Right.
And that just becomes kind of annoying.
And then the conversation takes this hilarious detour into the Super Bowl halftime show. People asking Mara, "Did you watch Kid Rock's thing or Bad Bunny's thing?" And Mara's like, "I watched the regular one, and I honored it the same way I do every year by going to the bathroom." That's classic Ma, equal opportunity cynic. But his point about not understanding the lyrics is actually kind of perfect because it highlights another modern issue. Everything gets politicized. Even music, even a halftime show that's supposed to be a shared moment, becomes a battlefield where people are searching for secret messages and moral crimes. And the truth is, not everything needs to be a political referendum. Sometimes a performance is just a performance. Sometimes it's just vibes. Sometimes it's just noise and lights and fun. But we've trained ourselves to interpret everything through ideology. And that's how you end up miserable. That's how you end up arguing about choreography like it's foreign policy.
We sort of saw both examples with the Super Bowl halftime show, where Kid Rock, who you had that dinner with, was doing his own show, and then Bad Bunny's doing his show. Which one did you watch, and what did you make of that cultural moment for America?
So funny. People were asking me the week before, which one are you going to watch? I said, I'm going to watch the real one, the regular one, like I do every year, and I'm going to honor it the same way by going to the bathroom.
Did you?
Of course, you have to go to the bathroom at some point.
Yeah.
But I watched it. I liked it. You know what? I didn't understand it, but like I said tonight in the show, I don't understand when Mick Jagger sings either. I don't understand any rock star. Nobody's really understandable. I didn't understand Kendrick Lamar very well either. I mean, that's okay.
Mar's biggest warning across all of this is disconnect. Disconnect from reality. Disconnect from common people. Disconnect from the idea that debate is healthy. He's basically saying if the Democratic Party wants to be competitive again, it has to stop treating voters like students in a mandatory sensitivity training. It has to stop outsourcing its messaging to online activists. It has to stop acting like disagreement is violence and conversation is betrayal. Because if you don't let people talk, they don't become more enlightened. They become more resentful, and resentment is rocket fuel in elections. So here's the question for you, and I want you to actually think about it. What do you find more frustrating in politics? Right now. The dangerous stuff that threatens institutions or the cultural stuff that makes you want to turn off your brain and move into the woods? Drop your answer in the comments because I guarantee the replies are going to be spicy. And look, none of this means Republicans are good or Democrats are bad or vice versa. It means the country is in this weird phase where both sides have their own brand of crazy, and regular people are sitting there like, can I just get a candidate who doesn't hate me and can keep the streets clean? That's why Maher resonates with people. He's not trying to be your therapist. He's not trying to be your preacher. He's saying, I want sanity back. And a lot of folks, left, right, and in the messy middle, feel that in their bones. Because at the end of the day, politics is supposed to be a tool, a way to solve problems, and a way to organize society so people can live decently. But we turned it into identity, into entertainment, into a constant moral reality show where everyone's competing to be the main character. And if Democrats want to win, Maher's message is brutally simple. Stop letting the loudest, most sanctimonious corner of the party set the tone for everyone else. Focus on what people can feel. Safety, affordability, confidence, stability. Talk like a normal person. Admit when something isn't working. Because if you don't adjust, you're going to keep losing to people you claim are monsters. And at some point, that's not just bad luck, that's bad strategy. Alright, that's my take. If you made it this far, you're legally obligated to hit like, subscribe, and share this with that one friend who argues politics like it's a cage match. And seriously, comment below. Do you think the Democrats can recalibrate and actually connect with normal voters again, or are they stuck in the same loop until 2028? I'll be down there reading the chaos.